ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमस्ते शारदा देवी काश्मीरपुरवासिनी विद्यादानं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। Om Shri Satgurudevaya Namaha. Okay, let me also quickly get my charger. This battery is almost very low, so we don't want to get interrupted. Just 1 minute. Okay, so now yesterday we discussed two things which I want to briefly touch upon and then get into the exercise of actual planning for student meet. And before we begin, I also wanted to know if you have any questions with respect to yesterday. So,
Dhavalji, once we start working, only the questions will pop up.
sure. So, starting the local server and will share my screen. Okay. So we saw two things yesterday. One is the front end working process in which there are two phases primarily. One is the design phase, and one is the technical phase. So design phase is more like the user experience phase of the process in which we figure out what are the real requirements of the user and what are we building and whether what we are building is making sense for the user or not. So inside our student meet, the UX design exercise more or less is done for the learning section or the fundamental section. We still need to validate our assumptions here. We have not yet tested it out with the students and teachers, but we should do that pretty soon. But other than that, the UX design portion of it is pretty much done. What needs to be done is now somewhat tweaking of look and feel and changing of colors and things like that. But how it should work is pretty much, thought through now. And what we are going to focus now on is the refinement of the technical implementation of these things. Okay. Because so far we have used Bolt to write a lot of code and generate a lot of content and structure. But we want to ensure that we do it in a way and in a structure that we can understand very well and reason very well, so that when it comes to maintenance and debugging later, we are able to easily reason with things. Okay, so for this portion of the app, we will be mostly focusing on technical aspects. But for the rest of the portions of the app, like these portions, we will be still doing that design exercise. Okay, like what is it that the user really needs? What things need to be there in this section? And whether they make sense for the user and how it will work like. Okay, so for these, we will be doing that design exercise. Now, with respect to the technology portion, we discussed two things. One is NPM.js. So NPM.js, we saw that pretty much every problem we are trying to solve has been solved already in the UI world, because it's a highly collaborative and open source world. Okay, the backend world is not so much collaborative and open source as much as the front end world. Okay, most of the things in front end world are open source. That means we can just take somebody else's code and use it ourselves. Okay, and everybody shares their code. So most of the times we can use inspiration from other codes. Okay, that is one. Second is that all the problems that we are thinking usually of are mostly solved in the front end world. Now, what is the advantage of using, say, a library like Lodash, which has specific ways of doing data processing, okay, for the data structures in JavaScript? Now you can see that 60 million people are using this library on a weekly basis. Okay, what is the advantage of using such a library? Can anybody tell me what are the advantages of using such libraries versus implementing this thing by our manual work? What are the advantages of such an approach?
It's already tried and tested by so many people, so it will be very robust and reliable.
Yeah, tried and tested by so many people, if there are any issues, they would have thought of it already. They have encountered it already and adjusted the design accordingly and updated the library. So since this is being used by, a lot of people since a lot of years, that means it is well tried and tested. Okay. Secondly, if anything goes wrong with this library's code, who is responsible for ensuring that it is fixed? Who is the one who is going to feel the pressure of fixing it?
Do we? I think there's a group of people who are doing this, right? They're open source.
Yeah, so these are the collaborators, right, of this library. So if anything goes wrong, if there are any issues discovered, these are the ones primarily were going to work on that and fix it. Okay, if we end up developing this kind of a thing ourselves and use it, then tomorrow the maintenance and debugging and issue fixing, that responsibility, it becomes ours. Does that make sense? So we are not just, reducing our time while just integrating this. We are also reducing our time moving forward for maintenance as well. Okay, if something goes wrong, it is up to them to fix it and release a new version, maybe 4.17.22, which will fix that issue, and quickly we will become compliant. Does that make sense? Okay, otherwise what happens is, if we do too many things ourselves, then the onus of maintenance and debugging and issue fixing will lie on us. If something goes wrong, that means we are the ones who are supposed to own that and fix it. Okay, right now it may sound easy, but tomorrow when we have so many things going on, the last thing we want to be bothered by is fixing something which is not immediately the business concern. Okay. What we want to be really focused on is fixing concerns which are related to business. We don't want to be fixing issues related to some data processing library in JavaScript. Does that make sense? Okay. We don't want to, worry about why the markdown is not rendering correctly in JavaScript. We want to be very much focused on how our WizKids Gurukul works and how our students are interacting with the app. But we don't want to be worried about, why or why not a certain markdown rendering is working correctly or not. Does that make sense? That is why, whenever possible, if we use and reuse the work that is already available, and especially if it is used by a lot of people, okay, then we ensure that we are basing our architecture on solid fundamentals. Clear? So selection of such toolkit and tech stack, it's called tech stack, will also become very important. That we are selecting the right tools to be used, which are used by a lot of people. Okay. And the second tangential thing which I wanted to cover quickly was, we saw that JavaScript, we can pretty much orient JavaScript to the problem we are solving rather than other way, right? We can orient the language to the problem we are trying to solve. How does that help with AI? Since we are also working with AI, because that's something I mentioned yesterday, but I realized that I did not follow up on. It will give you a lot of clarity in AI. It will give you a lot of clarity in AI. How does it matter so much in the field of AI? If a language can orient itself to a particular problem. Any guesses? Why it matters so much for AI or not?
AI, that language has intelligence, no, Dhavalji. So, can you repeat the question, Dhavalji?
Okay, what we saw is that, right? 1 minute. Yeah, I'll repeat it. So we saw that JavaScript is dynamic and functional. Okay, that means we can orient the language or change the language to map to a problem rather than other way around, where we map a problem to a language. So in case of Java world and other kind of languages, what would you do? You will try to map a problem to the language. Okay, my language is classical and it has object orientation, so I need to create objects. Okay, so I will start thinking in terms of classes and objects. Let everything be a class, and then I will instantiate objects out of it. Okay, versus this is a very different way of thinking. એટલી જ છે અત્યારે try. નથી થતી ભાઈ, કહું છું તો ખરા. કંઈક ના સ્ક્રૂઝ ચેન્જ કરવાના છે અત્યારે, આટલું થશે. So we saw that we can orient the language pretty much to any problem that we are trying to solve rather than the other way around. That means that, in case of React, we can say that my functions produce UI. Okay, I don't need to worry about you adapting my UI programming to the way JavaScript works. Okay, rather I am adapting JavaScript to how I'm producing UI. Does that make sense? I'm easily reprogramming the language to produce UI. Okay. So, see, I can tell you, in case of functional programming languages like Scheme or Lisp, from which JavaScript is derived, that the inherent capacity of the language is that you can change the language itself. Okay, you can write functions that can write functions. You can write functions that can change other functions. There is a very easy possibility where you can very easily modify the language itself. Okay, how does this become very important for AI? Why it is so relevant for AI? Okay. And that is precisely why you can see JavaScript being adopted almost everywhere. Okay, you can see that backend there is JavaScript, front end there is JavaScript. Okay, embedded there is JavaScript. A lot of places you will see JavaScript being used. Okay, left, right, and center for a lot of different kind of use cases. So why AI also benefits from that same thinking? In other languages, you will be more or less limited to the data structures that the language offers and work within that limited set. Okay. In case of JavaScript, what happens is that you can create very dynamic data structures, which are very arbitrary. And that can map to real world. Okay. For example, Let's see, one. Yeah, symbolic program. Okay. In other languages, you cannot even think of doing all these things. Like, if you given A, B, C, D, E, you want framed strings like this in the output. The strings are covered by frames, okay, which is a visual processing of the strings. Or you want to do something like magnify, okay, given 4 values of A, 5 values of A, you want to magnify the output for each of the values, okay. Or you want to give in some text and tooltip component, and what you're getting as an output is text with tooltip applied. Okay. So this kind of thinking, very functional and very dynamic thinking, data structures are so free ranging, so dynamic that you can give any input and you can get any output. Okay. And data structures are pretty much able to map to any kind of concept that you want to represent in the real world. Okay, that kind of thinking enables you to do something called symbolic programming. Okay, this is called symbolic programming, where you have actually a particular symbol, or in C language is, construct a pointer, okay, to a particular entity. Okay, that variable is directly a pointer to a particular entity. I am not able to bring it down to a very non-technical level. Neither we want to go into technicalities of this, because we don't want to even go into AI programming. But this is very interesting to understand that what you are working with is so powerful actually, okay, that you can do symbolic programming very easily. You can think of, things in a symbolic way very easily in JavaScript. Okay, because LLMs are actually language. Whereas in symbolic programming, you are actually having a graph, okay, of knowledge. Here you don't have a concept of conceptual model, but here you can actually have a concept of conceptual model. Okay, for example, cat. Okay, you can say that left eye, right eye. Face. Now you can also say that eye and ear. Eye and ear. Now this eye and ear are not just objects. They can be actually, or they are not just values. They can be actually objects in themselves. Okay, so you can have an eye kind of data structure, which can say pupil, night vision. Okay, so suddenly you have very complex data representation possible in a very simple way in JavaScript, which is very hard in other languages. You can quickly create data structures to hold complex information and represent them symbolically and process them using functions. Any questions here? Did this go over the top as I expected? Or does this make any sense?
So why it is used in AI? Why we use
Why it is
Java?
helpful in AI?
Yes.
Yeah, because see, AI at the end of the day, it's a good question. Okay, symbolic programming is very important to understand. Otherwise, you have no concrete way. LLMs, what is happening? For now, if you understood it from Vijayji, what is happening in case of LLMs is that it's trying to predict everything just based on your usage of words. It does not actually know what is an eye. Okay, and it is supposed to have pupils. It does not have this internal representation of this data. Okay, and that an animal has a face in which it has eyes. This kind of hierarchical representation is not there in LLMs to start with. Okay, it is not operating on the symbolic representation of knowledge. When we say I in ChatGPT, it does not understand that we are talking about this part. Internally, there is no such hierarchy of knowledge. Okay, it is simply trying to guess everything by word relations. Okay, it has read somewhere that cat face has two eyes, left and right. Okay, now if you ask that does a cat have eyes, where it will try to derive the information from? It will try to derive the information from this. Okay, that cat has eyes and left and right. It is trying to process this text of knowledge, this language piece, to determine and give you an output that yes, cat has two eyes, left and right. Versus in a symbolic knowledge representation, how it will do? If you ask cat has how many eyes, what it will do? It will go to a cat structure. It will go to a face structure. It will go to here and see if it is going to have an eye or not. Okay, if it has eyes also, so it has a proper hierarchy and symbolic representation of knowledge. So when you ask a proper symbolic AI, it will try and go through, or a knowledge-based AI or a word representation AI, it will actually process information in this way and give you an answer that, cat has eyes based on this representation. If you say, does a cat's eye have pupils? Okay, then it will go to this eyes eye object here, and it checks if it has pupil. And since it has pupil, it will say that yes, it has pupil. Versus in a language model, what it will do? There is a stream of text here. Now what it does is, okay, it says cat has two eyes, So it reads the word eyes here. Then it reads left and right, or tries to process it by language. Then also tries to see that eyes have pupils. Again tries to associate this by language. Like, okay, since there are two eyes and the eyes have pupils, then there must be two pupils. Does that make sense? These two approaches, the difference you understand?
Yes, Guruji.
It is trying to process the language here versus it is trying to create a symbolic representation of knowledge. Okay, so, such a language like powerful language like JavaScript or Scheme or Lisp operate at the level of symbolic programming. And that's where it makes it very easy to, kind of like think in terms of AI as well. Because there is no fixed form of input and output. You can pretty much input anything and pretty much get out anything as an output, but through symbolic programming. All right, so that was a nice detour. Now let's get back to work. I will open up two documents here. Student meet. Okay, this is another window. Yeah. So student meet UI flow and sample UI flow. So first, let us go and do the exercise of dissecting what is already there in student meet with respect to whatever we have learned so far in React. Okay, and let us break things down properly so that they make sense and we can distribute the work. Okay, now there is supposed to be a top level student meet app. Okay, which houses some information related to students. Okay, so it does an auth. There is a method called auth. Let me write component student meet purpose student meet app. Okay, route, home route. Now method is, one of the method is auth method. What does this method do? It calls auth endpoint, our auth endpoint, to authenticate a particular student. Okay. And so get auth or a post auth actually, whatever username, password hash equal to bar. And we get back a response is 200. Okay. Get back a success and token. So we get back a token with the auth path that we make. This token is very important because this is the token we want to supply while using all the other endpoints and APIs in the system. Why it is important to supply this token?
Don't know, Dhavalji.
From there only, the other
student
details
can-
can be fetched.
The student can communicate easily with the help of that token. It can allow the that API can give the access.
See, other APIs, everything needs to be security enabled, okay? Somebody cannot just come to a particular part of our application and directly start interacting, okay, without proper authorization. So
For
if,
further communication, he will use the same token.
yeah, so if I directly come to this part of application and if the application finds that there is no token here, what it will do actually? First, it will go here and force an authorization. Okay. Even if I directly land on fundamentals and technology, okay, I don't have a token. So I make a request there with get topics. Okay, without a token, what it will say, you don't have a token. So API will not give any data back. Otherwise, it becomes a security concern. Why? I can say that student ID equal to 1, which is my ID. I can set the student ID equal to 5 and get all the marks. What I will get now?
You will get someone else's marks.
I can easily access anybody else's mark by providing a student ID. Okay. So this mechanism is enforcing my being logged in to be able to access a particular part of the application. If I am not logged in here as this particular student, my get marks API will actually throw back what, 400, either bad request or there is some other code like 440 or something, forbidden.
404, Dhavalji, I think.
404 is not found. So if you are calling a wrong endpoint or a wrong address on the server, you will get 404. Okay. 403 is forbidden, I think. 403 is forbidden. So then I will get a response that I am forbidden to access this API because I am not authorized. Okay, so this is very important. I need to be able to store this token now throughout the app. Okay, so I'll create a context now. What is a context? Context is a component that will be automatically, shared throughout all the sections of this application. Okay. So if there is some data that I need to share across the entire application, I will create a context. I will name this as student context. What I will store here? Student ID. Okay. Token I can store here, but I will not need to read token from here all the time. There is another way that the token configuration is done. Once we supply this token to our API tool, which is Axios here, it will automatically use it throughout everywhere in the application. But the point being, without this token, nothing will work. Okay, it's like you going to a company as a visitor. So they give you a visitor card, right? Visitor ID. Okay, so to go wherever within that building, they will see if you have the visitor badge. Okay, without that badge, if they catch you, they will send you back to the reception. Does that make sense?
Yes, Ji.
It is your actually access authority. Okay. So each API endpoint is designed to catch this token. If it is not there, it will actually send you back to login screen. Okay. So I'll create a student context, which is supposed to store student ID. So all my components in the system will receive a student ID. Okay. So first is the fundamentals component. Not even there. Let's not even go there first. First is the summary component. Okay. What is it that we are expecting here in summary component? What is the purpose of summary component?
The student ID, the level, and the total points secured.
Yeah. We want to show student points, level, and the student information. Okay. So since we want to show the student information here as well, what we should do in the response, we want to get student name, and in this response, we also want to get or what you can do is make this into another call. Okay. Because we want to separate the concerns as well. We don't want to get all this information in an auth call. Okay. So I'll create another call here, which is get student info student ID equal to, not student info, student summary, student ID equal to 1. And response should be something like student ID, student name, points, and level. And whatever internal information we also want, we can get here. Okay, but for now, ID, name, points, and level. So this is what is going to be ended up storing in student context. Any questions here? With respect to this one?
So two calls are happening, Vijay, Dhavalji. First, the
Yeah.
author is authorizing
Hmm.
the ID. Once it is authorized, second is going and getting the summary, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And student context is going to hold all these things. Okay. Why so? Because all these things are going to always change based on activities throughout the app. Okay. I can get a level up even when I'm in the app. I can get points addition even when I'm within the app. Okay. So I'm possibly going to get all these changes done when the app is in progress. My session is in progress. So I want to store them centrally so that each component can request an update here easily. Okay. And my student summary component, okay, will actually be a very simple component. What does it take as props?
Student ID.
ID.
Student ID, then student name,
Level. Student level.
Level.
Point.
points, and level. All these things are actually these are not even props because they are in context. It's my bad. So I don't even need any of these as props. Okay, student summary is going to be able to access all of these. So let's rename this field to purpose render values of student ID, student name, points and level. Okay, render the UI of this. Okay, does this need any state of its own? Does this need a state?
Yes, Dhaval.
What state does it need?
Every time the user enters that state, it will change, no? The points.
Hmm.
So for the points we need
Hmm.
and level also.
Yeah, so that state is actually context one. Context is actually state.
Okay.
Okay. Context is a spatial component used for sharing state across components. It does not do anything else. It's just storing some values. Okay, it's like a component only, but it's not rendering any UI. Okay, so hierarchically it is sitting on the topmost level along with student mate. Okay. And storing that values. So student context shares, saves and shares the state. Okay, student summary. Now student summary is in another component called header. Okay, I need to use some sort of a tool to be able to properly visualize this. Let me see what I can use. Control. Pardon my Windows skills here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we have rectangle, no fill. And let us outline this by a color orange. So this is the student mate app component. Housing everything. Okay, let me actually take another screenshot. Or can I zoom out? Yeah. Yeah, very good. So this is the student mate app component at this level. Okay. Now we have another component. I need to increase the size of the brush. Okay. Called header within the student mate component. Okay. And header has another component. Let me use another value here, which is summary. Okay. Now this header component is at the level of student mate. So all the pages within student mate will share this header component. Okay. And this home screen is another component. With respect to the page that you are seeing correctly, this is a component called home. What does home component have?
All the other components
List
like
of
fundamentals, activities, fun friends.
It's having a card list,
Card list.
okay, for fundamentals and activities, fun friends, achievements, fun time, gallery, fun facts. Okay. AI tutor I'm leaving out now because it was only initially added, and now I think we'll have to discuss more before adding it back here. And even if it does get added, it is probably going to be a chatbot. So AI tutor, we don't want to add to this card list. Any other component on the home screen that we have?
Today's activity.
Yes. So the component within home screen is going to be along with the card list, okay, is today's activity or agenda. So one is that, there is a UI kind of a name here, which is today's activity. We can name it as today's activity as well. No harm in that. Or we can name it as agenda, whatever is something that the team can decide. So there is a today's activity component. Now, how does this component work? What are all the things that this component is doing?
providing the topics and the scores that can be achieved on that day.
Yeah, so for today, for this student which is logged in. Okay, so two things. For today, for this student that is logged in, what is the next activity which I have to do? So that is one. Doing that activity, how much time it will take? Okay, what is the title of that activity? What is the description of that activity? Okay. And how many points I will get when I do that activity? So that is all the information that this component is showing. And lastly, what is the link to that activity? Not just the activity name and all, but actual link to that activity as well. So this is Gravity activity. If I say continue on learning, I want to be able to also directly go in that part of application. Okay. So link as well. So what are all the things that this component needs to work? First of all, today's activity is going to use student ID from the context. Now, what should we do? Get all this information from server. Get agenda. Okay, or today's activity, whatever we name eventually. Student ID equal to 1. Server already knows what is the current date and current day. So we don't need to provide the server with what is the current date. Okay, the day on which it is called is the current day for that particular person. And we don't need to worry about getting yesterday's or tomorrow's activities. So we are also not bothered about being able to specify a different value. What are we expecting back from server for rendering this component?
The target topic,
Okay, so first of all, activity name, then activity,
time,
yeah, time or duration, then actually let's further simplify this data structure. Rather than specifying activity time, activity duration, activity this, activity that, we can create a section called activity in that structure. So name, description, then what are the things? Duration,
score,
okay, score, or activity points. I would say points. Score is something. See, naming selection is very important. Okay, I would rather suggest have 20-minute discussion on right names rather than actual coding, because it will be the point of inference in future. A right name can make a lot of difference. Okay, if somebody else is reading your code, if you have selected right names, then that means that they will be immediately understanding your code and work with the code as expected. Okay, so activity points. How many points I am going to get with?
progress level,
Score is usually, see, the differentiation here is that score is usually total. Okay, so this is my total. Although it says 850 points, what is this actually?
overall points,
Yeah, it's actually score. Okay, this is actually points. So I was in fact wrong here. We should have more meaningful name like score here, because this is my total points versus this is the number of points I'm going to get for this activity. Okay, now what are the other things for this activity?
progress level,
Time duration.
Duration, and most importantly, length. Okay, front-end does not know what it is going to be the length of the activity. You can also have one more thing here, ID, activity ID and length. Okay, just if I get the activity called introduction to gravity. Okay, let's say the ID is introduction to. Will I be able to construct the URL of this activity within my system by this ID? No, I need to know subject, topic, etc. to be able to construct the URL of this activity. It might be tomorrow something else completely different. Okay, go and upload an image in the gallery. Okay, so we don't know what is the context of the activity just by the ID of the activity. Who knows the full context of the activity? Our backend. Okay, who knows the full context? That which is this activity? Where is this activity coming from? Our backend. Okay, so backend can specify at the very least. Okay, if they don't want to worry about fundamentals and achievements and scorecard and all, then at the very least, what they can say is science, then gravity, okay, and it can specify type, something like fundamentals. So from this much we can actually construct the activity link, which will be what? Type plus path plus ID. This is going to be the link. Okay, so backend can say, okay, this is your activity type. Okay, this is the path. If at all you need to specify a path. Why path? Because some things can have deeper hierarchy. Say, for example, gallery might not have any hierarchy. Okay, you just have one gallery. There is no albums concept or anything. There might be albums concept or there might not be. We don't know. Okay. But say, for example, our clubs can have deeper path as well. Okay, then the backend needs to specify which club it is talking about. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Better is to just have a free form link. I would enforce that kind of, link structure, because tomorrow we might want to specify even more level of granularity, that science, gravity, introduction to gravity, and say master. Since you have already completed the learn portion, now go ahead and do what? Master. Okay. Which makes it very easy for front end to proceed to a particular part. But for this, Shravanji's team will have to do some thinking on how will they present with the right context. But only Shravanji's team can do this, if you think really about it. Okay, and that is why our back and front end interaction needs to happen here. Because who is aware whether the particular lesson is mastered or not, and particular lesson is learned or not?
Backend only knows.
Backend only knows. We don't know. Okay, so we cannot predict what link to show here. They have full context, given a student ID, given today's day, given what they've done yesterday. This is their today's activity for this subject. Does that make sense?
Yes, Ji.
Okay. So this is the data we need in order to render this component. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so then the assignment I have for you all is go ahead and implement student summary component for the UI. Okay, let that be the same exercise for all, but I want to see what is it that you're doing with this exercise. Let us start with smallest level of component in the system. Okay, you should render, given all these details, student ID, student name, points, and level. read them from a parent context called student context and render UI for this. It also has logout facility. Okay, this is not working right now properly. It has two things. Also show logout. Scorecard is useless link here because we are actually linking to a scorecard here. So I'll remove that from here. Okay. We want to just show the logout link for now. Does this seem doable?
Yes, G. We'll try it out.
Yeah. Okay. And this is a specific, I will not give a lot of hints, but I've kept the amount of details quite low for a very specific purpose. Okay. So let's see how we proceed here.
So we'll create a dummy context called a student context with dummy values.
Yeah.
And we are supposed to display it.
Yes. Okay. And also create a header component in which the student summary component resides. Header component should also have a logo. Okay, let us just add two things here so that it becomes a bit more of work for you. But primary focus is on student summary. Any other questions?
That logout link, we are just showing a link, but because we have not done any login, logout will not, it won't work. Yeah, just showing it. Yeah.
Yeah, but what should be the ideal thing we should do when we do a logout?
Should go to the home page. But in this is the home page only, right? This is only one part of it.
This is a logged in page.
Oh, okay. So it should go to a.
So we should create a UI which has all the summary, student summary as you have done here now, Dhavalji, and then logout button.
So what will logout button do?
From the parent context means
Yeah, let's remove the header and logo. I think, you are already asking the questions now. So I don't need to worry about adding more work to you. Yeah, good that you are starting to ask the questions.
so it should go to the parent homepage, not the student homepage. It logged out.
See, this is student mate. Where it is being used?
For the student.
Students.
Yeah, where, in Gurukul or at home?
At the Gurukul.
Okay.
So first
For
page can
now
be
it
like
is at
this, kids
Gurukul.
Gurukul or something.
Yeah. So for now it is at Gurukul. Okay. So it can be showing a login screen. Okay. Like this WizKids Gurukul and a login screen. You don't need to worry about implementing a login screen, but I like that you are thinking about this right now. Okay. That what should logout do? So that means that on clicking of logout, okay, what do we want to do is have a function called actually let's not even have a function called logout. Okay. let's just link it to something called /logout. So what should the logout link do? Have a link called /logout here. Then how will we intercept a logout link?
I didn't understand that.
In the route.
In the routes. Okay, there is a entry in the routes at the app level called logout, which is going to map to a component called logout. What this logout component will do? This is going to actually destroy the auth information in the app. Okay, this is going to be a very simple function. There is no UI associated with this component, but what it will do in the student context, okay, we have student ID and auth info and whatever. What it will do, it will just clear out the context. So as soon as this context is cleared out, the app can understand that the student is no more logged in, at which point of time the app will trigger a redirection to another link called login. Okay, this has a login UI.
But before that, it would have been stored, right? Or time to time, we are storing it in the backend, the current state. The
Which-
latest state has to be before logout,
Mhm.
sorry. So it has to be, we are assuming it is all the latest state of the student has been stored in the database, in the backend.
Yeah. Whatever are the actions are immediate. Okay, if there is a progress that student has made, that is saved immediately through an API call.
Okay.
So at any point of time, we are not assuming that, it is cached locally and, because anything can happen. Suddenly internet connection can go down, laptop can close, whatever. We don't want to rely on an unpredictable behavior and work around that to be more smarter than that. Rather, every action that we perform will be immediately saved to server. Okay. So this application does not have any cache or offline state. Is that the question that we were asking?
Yes, Kawalji.
Okay.
Only the logout action will destroy the memory. Till then,
Memory
it
of
is
the application.
automatically saved.
Yeah. And as soon as this memory, when I say destroy this memory, is the context here, local context here. Okay. Which is nothing but just having the auth details and the student ID. As soon as that is gone, the app triggers a login call. And it's not even the responsibility of this student summary component. Okay, student summary component simply links to what? /logout. The intelligence is introduced at the app level of login and logout. Clear?
Yes, SG.
You don't have to worry about that intelligence of doing a login logout. The only intelligence this needs to have is to that link that to the /logout. But you need to understand the flow. Okay, and how we are structuring things. Does that make sense?
Yes, G.
Yes.
Okay. So I want you all to implement the student context and student summary component and render the points and level. Okay. Clear? It should also render one more thing. I think logout is there. One more link we want to show is show or link to profile. So if I click here, okay, I will be taken to my profile. Okay, don't create a profile section. Just link to /my account. Even if it goes there and there is nothing there, it doesn't matter. And link to scorecard when I click on any of these points or level. So if I click anywhere here, it takes me to /scorecard, which is actually a component here. Okay, called achievements. Okay, so we don't need to worry about showing that scorecard ourselves, but link there. And if I click here, it is my account. So 3 links all together. One is a drop-down link, but otherwise my account and scorecard. Any questions?
Drop down or button?
No, it's a drop-down menu. Just a minute. So this is a drop-down menu and it renders the links here. Idea is that tomorrow there might be more things here.
Okay.
All right. So first step is that I want to see how well you're doing this component. Second, we will go and do this agenda component. So that will be two starting points for you. And then we will embed one of your actual work into the production UI. Okay, tomorrow what we will be primarily doing is going through the structure of this portion of the application. Today we covered this structure. Tomorrow we will go down and cover the hierarchy within the fundamentals. Okay. All
Right.
right, we can close for today.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dev.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Dev.